Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with the early morning video of the day. I'm listening to the Wrestling Observer right now. I'm in between school drops. I dropped one, and now I'm going to be dropping another one off at school in just a few minutes. But the opening story was a lot about the story that I read last night, talking about Jeff Jarrett giving up his shares of TNA Impact Wrestling to the Carter family and Panda Energy in order to do this global force angle that we just saw on television, which paid off last night with the lethal lockdown. TNA going up against Global Force. On one hand, it's good that Jeff Jarrett was able to, give those shares back to TNA Impact Wrestling. It was good that he was able to get his brand on television. The whole angle started out really well. I think, honestly, that they just sort of sat on it too long. With him coming back, him winning the King of the Mountain match at Slammiversary, winning the King of the Mountain title. I know that they needed that week of speculation to figure out what was going on, but it seemed like it was too long between Slammiversary, between the time that, Jeff Jarrett went into the Hall of Fame, Jeff Jarrett became the new general manager of SmackDown. I know that sometimes with wrestling, they start an angle, people hate it, and people say, you got to give it time to breathe, you got to let this build up, and then it's going to be, really good, and it's going to be hot. But to me, the Global Force versus TNA angle never really got off the ground, and I think I was one of the people out there that was really looking forward to this angle when it first went down, trying to see how they would portray Jeff Jarrett, how they would portray TNA. I was hoping for them to get a win out of this. And at the end, I think that, honestly, the Global Force storyline angle probably made TNA Impact Wrestling worse for the past few months. I think that, honestly, when you look at the roster that Global Force brought to TNA, to go up against their guys and make it look believable, like with Lee and Hawkins winning the tag titles, somebody winning the King of the Mountain championship and immediately losing it the next week. It just made it look like less than Bush League. It was, the only way to put it was, it just wasn't good. I mean, it just wasn't what it was. Honestly, I understand what Jeff Jarrett did, giving up his shares, basically buying television time on Impact to get his brand over and get the people to see Global Force Wrestling for the first time. And then maybe people in towns that are having the shows will go out to it. I know that Jeff is desperately trying to pull together a deal to get his Global Force amped up on television somewhere, anywhere. But if the deal was that he's trying to get on with Destination America, once Destination America kicks off TNA Impact, I think it's a bad place to get a deal. I mean, obviously, you could tell that at one point, the early part of this year, when they brought in Impact, they were gung-ho on professional wrestling. But this is the channel that basically has axed out everything to do with Impact except for the live viewing. And there's no best ofs, there's no The Week in Impact, there's no, I don't know what other shows they did. Mike Tenay watching Impact and giving his insight. That was another show that there was for a while that didn't last long. I think you got to go with anywhere else in the world except for Destination America. I would have honestly, Jeff's a businessman, and Jeff's a good businessman. He already got one wrestling company off the ground. Some people say that he was lucky that Impact got to the point that it was there. I remember when Impact was born, it wasn't going to last a month, it wasn't going to last 2 months, it wasn't going to last a year, it wasn't going to last 2 years, and it's still here, and it's still going strong today. It was the wrestling company that nobody wanted to give credit to, and, for as many bad things people like to point out that TNA did, there's always those points in wrestling history when you look at TNA and you're like, wow, they did it. I mean, when they got Angle, that was huge. When they signed Joe and they built that guy up, that was huge. AJ Styles was a great find out of the pile. Nobody wanted this guy. They started putting him on TV, and they built up, a legitimate superstar. He did some time in WCW, but it was TNA that really made that guy the star that he was by the time he left. And it's still a mystery to me why they didn't want to keep AJ at that point. But I guess they were just starting to just cut costs anywhere they could, and his contract came up, and there was nothing that they could really do at that time. But what a mistake that was. If I was Jeff, what I'd be wondering about is, how long is TNA going to be going? Honestly, some of the most important things that they have once this company goes down is that tape library. And now that he's not, a shareholder, he doesn't hold on to any of that. And that more than likely, once this company is sold off, or that, once this company closes and they start selling things, that's probably the one thing that people are going to want to hold on to. I know that when Jeff was starting Global Force and he was trying to get this off the ground, that was the story that was coming out. That was like, did you know that he still owns a share of TNA? And it's kind of weird that he's, shopping his own company while he owns this other company. And that was the one reason why I thought he was holding on to it, was that, he probably thought that this wasn't going to last that long. And once it lasted long, once it didn't last long, that would sell, and then you'd get a portion of his money back that he started the company with, and it wouldn't be a total loss for the guy. But you got to give it to him. The guy's one hell of a businessman. He was on The Art of Wrestling, I believe it was last week, a really good a really good podcast. He was talking about how his grandma got into the wrestling business, and then that basically rolled into him getting in and him having the concession stand, and him selling pops and popcorn, 50-cent programs, and things like that. And I thought it was a really good show. And I respect Jeff. He's one hell of a guy. You got to give it to him. This guy loves wrestling, and even if he's, on the promoter side where he's trying to make money off of it and things like that, it's just, it's in him, and he loves it. And, you would think, hey, why don't you go try and do something else at this point? But, he wants to start another company. He wants to show everybody what TNA could have been if he stayed in charge. And, you got to wish him the best. I mean, when you look at the Global Force shows, I wish that one came here. They don't look like they draw a ton of people. When you look at the shows, and I think it's just because it's in a baseball stadium. But when you look at like pictures that people post of like the meet and greets and things like that are before the show, those things look fucking packed out. So they got to be making some money, or they wouldn't be doing them. I've heard good things about the television tapings, but also when you look at television tapings, the rosters that they're using there aren't the rosters that they're using when they go on the road. The Reno show didn't have anything that made me want to drive to Reno to watch that show, and I really thought about doing it for nothing more than just going to meet Guns and Gallows, and it just, nothing else on the card was worth it. So we'll see what happens. I thought this was a very interesting story about how TNA got Global Force to appear. It's weird, two companies coming together. They tried to do something that was going to shock the world. You can look back at the USWA going up against ECW, WWF against ECW. Those invasions really worked. The WCW versus WWE invasion. Well, everybody was under the same, WWE at that point, because WCW had closed, but people still wanted to believe, and people still wanted to see it happen. And I know that the invasion storyline was at the end, it really wasn't what it's supposed to be. The invasion pay-per-view did huge numbers, though, and I think after that point, people realized that, WWE guys were going to be wrestling for WCW, and it didn't make a lot of sense. At the end of it, Angle and Stone Cold Steve Austin were over there, and it just wasn't what it could have been. And we all know why. Years later, like looking back, it makes sense that, Goldberg, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, all of these guys, even Scott Steiner, weren't there, and it makes sense because they guaranteed contracts and stuff like that. Why would you want to give that up to go work for Vince for less of what you could be making while you're sitting at home? Guys like Booker T, guys like DDP, Those are guys that took advantage of the situation and realized that it was probably better for them to make the jump. And if DDP didn't do it then, he was only going to get older, and maybe Vince wouldn't want him. So we'll see what happens with this. Hopefully Global Force will strike a deal. Hopefully TNA, now that the Global Force storyline is over, they'll kick something off, and hopefully it'll light a fire, and maybe they can get going over there. It looks like they have till the end of the year with Destination America.